Another powerful contribution made by Chopin is his discovery that each finger has a personality when playing at the piano. He would go as far as writing his own music based on the ideal note-finger match that the message required. One would imagine that, while playing Chopin's music, one is also following his own acrobacies over the keyboard.
In our journey through Chopin's technical ideas, we will often find that the best pianists usually get to know each finger intimately, perhaps to the point of cherishing their individuality, like Chopin did. He wrote, "People are working against nature when they try to make each finger sound the same. On the contrary, people should develop their finger individuality." Indeed, to Chopin it did matter musically that a note be played by a particular finger, to the point that for each note there are as many sounds as fingers in the hand. Upon placing the hand at its natural position over the keyboard, Chopin recommended to let the fingers fall over the keys, which is a complete departure from the typical play or press the keys. Several of his students remember this advice as a major landmark in their advancement. Let us begin with the second finger and leave the thumb for the end for reasons of simplicity. And let's imagine a discussion between Chopin and one of his most talented students, Carl Filch. The talk begins with Chopin saying, "Remember, Carl, the third finger is the king of singers." Then Carl would reply, "Yes, Monsieur Chopin, but the second finger is the young prince with many surprises to show." Being the entry arch of the vault, the second finger has a responsibility. It is a strong finger indeed, but also a leader. Such a leader that is not easy to work its sensitivity. Of course, the phalangeal metatarsal articulation is also a main point of support. At the wrist, however, the support of the second finger can be associated with the inner part of the wrist, as we saw in the video about the hand. The relationship between the second and thumb can be better understood when considering their articulation proximity at the carpal support. This concept is of tremendous help when, for example, playing the beginning of a etude in C minor, opus 10 number 12, also known as the Revolutionary. According to Chopin, the third finger is the strongest and is also the middle of the hand and the one with the more complex personality. Again, he was right because, as we saw in the hand video, the third finger has its own independent column at the center of the wrist, which in turn articulates with the center of the radius bone in the forearm. Because of all these features, it is good to remember that the third finger is also a main support of the hand. All other fingers have their particular technical challenge, but the third finger has little reason to worry about strength and independence. Being at the center of gravity of the hand, it does have certain seniority and certain weight, one that shows command, but also extreme sensitivity when needed. For Chopin, the fourth finger had an unfair reputation. He called it the weakest Siamese of the third finger on account of being linked to it by a ligament. This comment is particularly interesting because now we know that, even if belonging to a different carpal column, the fourth finger is certainly attached to the third by an obliquous intertendon fiber. Chopin warned against pursuing a total independence from the third finger. In fact, he called the marriage between the third and fourth finger a gift from God. Another particularity of the fourth finger is that it shares carpal support with the fifth finger. In a letter to his friend Julien Fontana, dated August 1848, near the very end of his life, Chopin mentioned somewhat humorously that the only things left of him were a large nose and an entrained fourth finger. Finger 5, at least in classical and romantic music, not only has its own technical features, but usually it has a leading musical role as well. In the left hand, finger 5 functions as the voice for the bass, while in the right hand it usually represents the soprano voice. In Chopin's hand, it looks nearly vertical from the proximal interphalangeal articulation, and it matches the thumb line of contact. Often neglected, however, finger 5 barely performs its minimum. At the wrist, finger 5 support is shared with finger 4 at the external column. This is relevant because it may account for the wrist arrangement seen on virtuosos, where the movement of the carpal system seems to wave. The thumb is exceptional among all fingers. Its main articulation begins in the wrist itself, thanks to a wonderful little bone called the trapezium. This articulation allows the thumb to have the freedom that it has. However, the pianist must be aware that the movement of the thumb, when looking at its dorsal side, goes sidewise, and that it also goes outwards and inwards when reaching a new key. The whole hand can be imagined like a cathedral dome, where the thumb serves as a double-hinge gatekeeper. Another major difference between the thumb and the rest of the fingers is that the former touches the piano keys using a half-flesh, half-nailed contact. This may prove to be difficult at the beginning, particularly when trying to maintain the equilibrium over the black keys. In fact, if the initial feeling is difficulty in maintaining the thumb equilibrium, a student may be in the correct direction. A good passing of the thumb under the hand requires 1. That another finger holds the weight of the hand, 2. Maximum relaxation in all other fingers, 3. That the thumb performs an economical and relaxed movement to the next key. At all times when doing this drill, please remember that the thumb is mostly controlled by muscles in the hand. Chopin's piano lessons were legendary because of their immediate results. Some students would later remember that the first lessons were a martyrdom. They would spend 1 or 2 hours with Chopin just working in one measure of a score. Yet, because of immediate progress, there would be no necessity for years and years of tedious exercises. The master was excruciating in the fingering of the music. After all, each finger was like a different singer, so that a particular note should be played only with a fitting one, provided that the hand does not lose its natural position. In the next video, however, we will revisit the notion that these fine nuances were possible with the delicate pianos of the early 19th century. Later, the modern piano would allow for more power and energy, but to the detriment of detail and sensitivity.